Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today's exploration into new music looking at a brand new track, music video, not just official audio, from the Hirsch Effekt. The track is Otus, and I've been a fan of Hirsch Effekt, of the stuff that I've heard from them, but haven't had a chance to dive into anything new lately. It looks like the album comes out next month sometime, so yeah, this is a first chance to listen to some of that. Let's dive into it, see what's going on. Interesting. Really nice. Not what I would expect from them. Yeah, that heavy emphasis on 4. Really interesting. We do get a bass kick on 1, but it doesn't have that follow through that I would expect coming in on 4 like that. The bass tone right here, it's absolutely selling this section. And just to get a real good showcase of it, that rising energy over here. Really interesting vocal backing vocal part to this. a really strong sense of control throughout this track, going specifically where they want to and taking the listener on a journey with them. For a first listen, I'm having a bit of trouble connecting all of this, what the journey's supposed to mean. There's influences in here I wouldn't expect, given what little I've heard from the Hirsch Effekt.
Die Zeit läuft davon und sie ist nicht bald vergessen, wer ich war.
Oh. Yeah, so nice breath control on that scream. But then, like, the guitar work underneath was fantastic too. Layered harshes. Dude, the tones. Bass kick just punching through my chest. You know what's interesting is in that breakdown there, I got some Vicarious vibes from Tool. Love the groove based off of the bass, guitar and drum syncopation. Ooh, changing things up. I'm gonna be real excited, or interested might be the word, to see what y'all say about this track in the comments. Especially older Hirsch Effekt fans. because at least the image that I have of them is very different from this. And I always like to see where older fans stand when it comes to bands evolving or possibly changing their sound, and how they view that. Because sometimes, it seems like a natural extension or movement into a newer sound. And other times it's just a completely, out of left field change. And there's still some things that feel Hirsch Effekt to me in here, but on the whole, there's very little that I attribute to the sound I associate with them, which admittedly is based off of 3 songs, maybe. I haven't heard a lot from them. But if nothing else, this just tells me that they can paint with a very wide palette, um, and they have quite a bit of skill in composition and performance that I wasn't expecting from them. But maybe this is more of a natural movement into this sound, and maybe they've even done this sound before, and I'm just not aware of it. So that's kind of where I'm asking the fans of the band to chime in and let me know what's up with that. So here's the I wish I had read these before getting in. They have some hashtags in their description box, and the first one is artcore, and I assume that that is going to be some sort of combination of like art rock with metalcore or post-hardcore. It is the artsier side of core music. And I can kind of see that in there. Their second hashtag is progressive metal, and yes, I mean, if most of these riffs had come out of gent bands, if Periphery had put out this riff, if actually I could see Tesseract putting out that ending riff we had there, which we had heard a couple times throughout the track too. Um, I don't think I'd bat an eye. It feels very genty progressive metal area of music. And I don't say any of this to in any negative context. I'm simply I'm talking my way into understanding what I just listened to because I don't know how I feel about it yet, and I'm trying to get there. But see, here's another interesting thing. There's a lot of subdued sections here that work within consonant bright harmony. And I don't mean that they're sonically bright. Most of this song has a bit of a rounded dullness to the sonic sound. That's a weird phrase. Um, it's not a sharp song. Everything in here feels kind of blunt and dull. Even when we look at the genty chugging, it has this nice roundness that feels more like a blunt impact than being stabbed or a sound cutting through. Um, and that's what I mean, where it sort of has this darkness overall to the sound, but harmonically, when we look at chord progressions, there's brightness in here that I don't typically look for in the Hirsch effect. We've checked out that. I wish I could remember the name of this song because it was phenomenal. Um, they played with a larger band. Might have been an orchestra. They had a choir in there too. That was a phenomenal track. And then I think my first introduction to them was noisy mathcore stuff, really looking on the dissonant side of things, and looking for darker harmonic consonants. Really loud, angsty, angry. This feels closer to Porcupine Tree in some ways. Um, it has these moments that are steeped in a bit more of darker harmonic ideas, but always find a way to at least momentarily resolve to something brighter. It is a song that feels hopeful overall. and is, again, just an emotion I don't associate with them. It almost feels, I don't know if I want to say it feels like a different band, but my limited exposure to Hirsch Effekt did not prepare me for this. I think is a very accurate statement and a good way to sort of tie all this together. Aside from my subjective experience with this, what is objectively happening in this track, though? A lot. It is progressive metal by way of utilizing a series of ideas in consecutive manner that creates the feeling of a journey. It's a larger epic of a track. It's 9.5 minutes long, and there's at least 4 or 5 styles in here, and possibly even 6 unique sections. Um, Maybe 7 if we can include some variation. We have our Genty style, super rhythmic, pushing against a 4/4 pulse, and with these really deep, wide, resonant tones from both, actually from all the instrumentation. The drums have a ton of punch. The bass is punch sonically personified. It is such a powerful sound. I love the bass tone on this. And the guitar tone is just gorgeous. It has this nice sharp fuzziness to it, but it's rounded off somehow into a blunter sound, as not to cut through the noise, but to add to that blunt impact that we get from the punchiness of the drums and bass. Everything comes together in a way that is just, it really is a magnificent display of sonic attention with whoever engineered the sounds. Well, I mean, it's two part, right? Because I assume the band members crafted their own tones, at least for the uh, the two guitars, and the drummer, I'm sure, has chosen specific instruments for his kit based on their timbre and color and all of that. But then you also have your engineer who's EQing everything and mixing it all nicely. It's a group effort, but sonically, this is just gorgeous. All of these heavier, impactful metal moments sound phenomenal because of the attention to sonic identity of what these instruments sound like, what their voice is, and how they end up getting mixed together. It's interesting because it is what you would want, right? If you're writing this punchy, syncopated gent music, you want the punch. So you're going to go for that in the mix, but there's also something in here, and it might just be the tones of the instruments themselves that feels unique. I don't know if I'm going to say that it feels very Hirsch Effekt. Again, my preconceived notions of who they are and what they do got obliterated with this track. But it definitely feels like no other bands, despite genty rhythms being very popular these days. I don't think I would ever get this confused for another popular gent band, or even just a more iterative metalcore verse, right? Metalcore is getting real big with the syncopated ideas these days. It's missing that homogeneity to the sound. There's something unique to this. And I think the more I listen to this track, and possibly eventually even the album, I will eventually associate this guitar and bass tone to the Hirsch Effekt mentally, so that when I hear something like it in the future, I'm like, oh, these guys are, sounding very Hirsch Effekt. It'll become that verb, or sorry, that adjective. Um, there's something to the audio here that is unique to the band, and I think that's one of the things I enjoyed most about this. Aside from these rhythmic sections, though, we also have atmosphere, I think is what I want to call it. There's a couple of different ways they explore this. One is just drone. We have usually a guitar and maybe some synths just sort of existing, long held out notes, really focusing on the emotion of the atmosphere and the ambiance of the section. These are the sections I think I understood least on this first time through, and are definitely going to take a couple repeat listens to figure out what exactly is going on. This, I think, is the meat of the journey. It's what creates the experience. Um, it's what elevates it past being a song into something larger. And I can feel it. I understand that these are to help create contrast, to create pacing, to help the song evolve in a way that feels natural rather than simply a series of syncopated guitar riffs going heavy all the time. But as to what specifically they're doing, what the purpose is within the larger storytelling of the music, I don't know. I appreciated the switch up, moving from driving syncopated metal stuff to this more ambient slow burn. Uh, but I have no idea what the purpose is. And interestingly, we also have just more subdued moments that feel like they focus on the same ambient musically but introduce a movement in our vocals. Usually we will have these long held out notes in the background. Maybe we'll have some sort of moving clean guitar line on top of them, but the vocal melody is what drives these parts forward, and it feels like an extension of those purely ambient atmospheric sections in a way that it creates a midpoint, at least as far as momentum goes, between the driving forward velocity of the metal and the stagnation and slow exploration of the pure ambience. And balancing these three sides, I think, is what really is going to make the song or allow the song to stand the test of time if it is going to. Interestingly, balancing these three things is what makes it difficult to fully get a gist on as far as a first listen goes. So I think that's one of those decisions that is going to help it out in the long run, but I really hope people don't get turned away from this particular track, especially if it's their first introduction to Hirsch Effekt based on some of this alone. But I fear that it might. I'm curious if this is their first single from this album or not. I might look that up when I look at the lyrics, but I don't have any immediate information here. I am, like I said, I am very curious about what they're doing with this album and if this is going to be their sound for it or if this is just one of their proggier tracks on it. Now, there was a moment in the middle of the song where I said that this band has or at least this track has a ton of influences that I would not expect. And I've already name dropped Gent and Porcupine Tree, but here's an interesting one. There was a moment around the 6 minute mark, I think, where the song chilled out quite a bit. I think we moved to primarily synth and clean electric guitar with light drum and bass, and very soft spoken vocals. One of those ambient plus vocal movement ideas I was just talking about. But the chord progressions had two chords of a bit of darkness, a third chord with an uplift, and a fourth chord that was a bit more mixed. It created ambiguity in the resolution. This, mixed with the melody, the note choices that the vocalist was utilizing in their lead melody, felt very pop emo. And as the electric guitars, or as the guitars shifted back into something heavier and driving while still sticking with those chord progressions before we went full on into that heaviest moment at the end of the track, I began to get post-hardcore vibes as well. Now, I think Hirsch Effekt is post-hardcore, or used to be, or has written a lot of post-hardcore adjacent tracks. I mentioned that their sort of noisy, mathy stuff is what I associate with them. Um, but I would not expect emo melodies, or it's not necessarily emo, it's the pop emo side of things that I think really shines through there. And I'm curious if that's a specific influence, a band that somebody in this group likes to listen to in pop emo or pop emo adjacent. I know pop emo is making a big comeback these days, and pop rock in general, actually. And it's possible that maybe a revival band has caught the ear of one of them and it's slowly influencing some of their writing. It's just not a sound I would have expected from them, though. I think to wrap up my thoughts here, because I don't necessarily have any more specific topics I want to talk about, I'm intrigued. I think that they are still executing on a phenomenally high level as expected from them. They're exploring a sound that I haven't heard them try before, but that doesn't mean that this is brand new for them. Again, fans, let me know what's going on there. But I am ready to hear more. I don't think their album Urian is on my list, primarily because my list of upcoming albums is rather short. I know I got King's Crow on there with Hopium. We got Sum 41's Heaven and Hell. That might be it. I think most of the stuff that I was waiting for has already come out. But this is going on there because September 29th, I'm going to make this promise and break it, but September 29th, I want to listen to this. I want to listen to this album. And have it be my first full Hirsch Effekt album and see what's going on with them because I'm very intrigued. The song itself, I'm iffy on. I enjoyed my time with it, but I'm not sure I would come back to it. But I think a lot of that comes from my lack of understanding. I don't have a very strong grasp on what happened here, and I think that more listens and beginning to get a stronger understanding of what they're aiming for will increase my likability of it and subsequently my want to listen to it. But I am interested if they decide to make an entire, as they call it, artcore album, what that would sound like. Would it just be a lot of this, or are there other artsy aspects of music writing that they want to explore? That's just a lot of words to say. I like moments that went on in this track, but overall I'm a bit perplexed by it. And that concept of enjoying some minutia but missing out on the bigger picture, really enjoying this one tree and not really grasping that there's more of them to look at. That's a really really weird way to say missing the forest for the tree. Trees? Trees. Anyways, I'm intrigued. I want to hear more. I'm going to hit some lyrics and then we're going to wrap this up. The lyrics are in German, so the translation might be a little off, but it seems to be about somebody at the end of their life. This theme is popping up a lot. I don't know if it's just stuff we've checked out recently or if it's stuff we've checked out recently that's recent music as well. I think it is. Is this just a trend? Are the 2020s making us all doomers? The idea here is that this person's at the end of their life. They have personified time as a she. And so a lot of this song is about what she does and the narrator's relationship to her. And of course, she and her are both time, the sheer concept of it. And talks about how time wears them out, leaves them with an emptiness like a pale ghost, and all of this is not necessarily put onto time as a burden, but a burden that the person carries themselves. At one point, um, says that they carry the trauma of all their years. And what was another thing? There's another line in here that mentioned that he wished he had done things differently, has regret about life. Am I making that up? Why can't I find this line? Oh, okay. So I think I misremembered it a little bit. It says, I wish I could see us one last time before I give myself up to her completely. So there is regret, or at least a final wish to do something differently or more than they had. So it's I was parallel to that idea. I don't know why I stored it in my memory a completely different way though. But that's what the whole song is about. It's about how time pulls us, and as much as we resist, there's no way to go back or to release its pull on us. It says, when everything passes and everything withers, as it always has and always will be. Time takes us all, is basically what that says. There's no escaping it. And when it's too late, you know. Oh, actually, here it is. I wish I had done things differently, but I realized too late that time is running out and she'll soon make me forget who I was. Which I wonder about that. Like, there's this idea of withering and decay, and I immediately put a lot of this towards death, but that one line could be how time makes us forget. It could be a track about mental illness or sorry, mental disease. Um, and still being alive, but losing your memory, which is, in a sense, a death upon itself. But yeah, so pairing this concept, the themes, to the music, I think it makes sense that there are many somber moments in here. There's a lot of elements of reflection and introspection in those more pensive moments that is reflected well in the lyrics that are basically about looking back on how things have gone and wishing they had been better. There is a bittersweetness to some of this, with a heavier emphasis on the bitter. I'm curious then what stanzas here are the aggressive ones, where the metal kicks in. I wonder if those lines specifically might carry more weight, knowing that they're not spoken cleanly and that there's a bit more grit and power behind them. Something to check out on a second or third listen after I've got a bit of a better grasp on the music and want to have the lyrics pulled up while I listen. All in all, the lyrics do make me even more intrigued about this track and make me want to revisit it soon. Might even give it another listen right after I finish this video. Those are my thoughts on the Hirsch Effects. What is this track? Otus. That's what it's called? Otus? That's the name of the album, right? No, the album's Urian. Okay. I wonder if this is going to be a concept album. I feel like a lot of art described albums, this one being artcore, has a concept in mind, even if it's not a narrative story. It might be an exploration of a specific theme or topic, um, where the songs might not come together to tell a traditional story, but they do come together to explore something very fully, where each song might work well as a standalone, but offer something larger in the context of the tracks around it, sort of like an anthology. Anyways, I'm intrigued. I want to know more. I've had some questions. If you have answers to them, put them in the comments. Also, thoughts, perspectives, opinions, anything that you want to add to this, put those down in the comment section as well. Above the comments in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you to this menu here. You can find my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow. This is so weird. We'll be back tomorrow at well, we have a special bonus video in the morning. Keep an eye out for that. And then we also have the album review tomorrow evening, as usual, at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.